I'm reading from Mark, chapter 15, beginning at verse 33. And as you can see on page 1453. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And at 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing near heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling Elijah." Someone ran, filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down," he said. With a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from the top to the bottom. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God." Some women were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger and of Joseph, and Salome. In Galilee, these women had followed him and cared for his needs. Many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem were also there. It was preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath. So as the evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked if Jesus had already died. When he learnt from the centurion that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. So Joseph brought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph saw where he was laid. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Well, good morning. Well, we love a good disaster movie, don't we? As we've just heard from the conversation. You know how they go. Everything is collapsing, systems failing, people trapped, no way out. And then at the last moment, the hero swoops in and saves the day and escapes just in the nick of time. Jurassic Park, I don't know whether that came up in your conversations, powers restored just in time. The Hunger Games, Katniss outplays the system and survives. The Incredibles, the families come together, defeat the threat. It's all sorted. That's what heroes do. They save others and then they save themselves just in the nick of time. Now, step back into the first century. In the passage that Judith just read for us. And imagine yourself standing at the cross, not just as one of the locals, but as the Roman centurion who's overseeing the death of these three criminals. So as a Roman centurion, your heroes, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, heroes are kings who fight, kings who conquer, kings who win. In your world, heroes have power and use it boldly. And now, as Roman centurion, you're standing in front of a man on a cross with the label above his head, King of the Jews. Mocked, bleeding, gasping to breathe. And the crowd around him are saying exactly what you're thinking. They're saying, save yourself. He saved others, he can't save himself. He is not acting like any king you have ever admired. Not yet, anyway. See, here's the thing. The events of that day completely change his mind. The events of that day, the darkness, the cry, the torn curtain, they're not random. They are events that show us exactly what is happening on that day, on the cross. So it's crucial we understand each one of them. Let's have a look at them. Firstly, notice what cannot be seen. Verse 33, you see it there in the Bible. If you have the Bible open in front of you, that'll help you. What page was it again, Judith? 1453. Thanks, Jude. So verse 33. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. Notice the darkness in the middle of the day. So Christmas is associated with light in the middle of the night. Easter is associated with darkness in the middle of the day. So in context, 9 a.m. until noon, Jesus is hanging on the cross. 3 hours. He is pulling himself up by his pierced arms and pushing himself up with his pierced feet, gasping for breath, holding on to breath. Now then at noon till 3 o'clock, Jesus is there pushing and pulling on the cross in the total darkness. At the very moment in the day when the sun should have been at its brightest, darkness reigned. Now, during the Passover festival, where a lamb is sacrificed for every household, this is held at full moon. And so even during the night, there is ample light, but not here in the middle of the day. Why? Well, Romans around the cross would associate darkness during the day with death of heroes. And they're not entirely wrong, are they? But the Jewish locals around the cross know that darkness is often a sign of God's judgment. So if you remember back to the plagues of Egypt, that darkness was one of the plagues. God warned his people that if they were unfaithful to him, that they would grope around in the dark in the middle of the day. That's in Deuteronomy. And Amos, the prophet, says the same thing. And now that is actually happening. The clear message is that God is angry. Not in a way that we often think about anger, as unpredictable or explosive or a result of losing control. Many of us have seen that kind of anger in ourselves or in others, and we know how destructive that can be. But God's anger is different. It's settled, it's deliberate, it's a personal response to what is truly wrong. Because wrongdoing matters deeply to God. God cares about what has been done to you and what you've done to others. God cares about all of it. Because he is loving, but he is also perfectly just. He cannot simply overlook wrongdoing as if it doesn't matter. I mean, we care about injustice when we see injustice. So can we really expect the God who made us not to care any less? There are pictures of people's relationship with God. In the Bible, there are pictures. Our picture with God is pictured in different ways, like a loving father with a son, like a shepherd with sheep. And those images are true, but they're actually not the whole story. Because of our wrongdoing, that relationship is actually damaged. Our wrongdoing causes a separation between us and God, between the father and the child, between the shepherd and the sheep. And so this darkness that we have at the cross here is actually another image of our relationship with God. It demonstrates the brokenness in our relationship with God. It's a true picture. That's why the darkness here at the cross in Mark 15 matters so much. It's a picture of God's settled anger and judgment. Separation. So firstly, notice what cannot be seen here. Notice this darkness as a picture of God's settled anger, the problem in our relationship with him. But secondly, notice what can be heard. Jesus only says one thing on the cross here. In fact, he quotes a psalm. You see it in verse 34. Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Here is the shock. The darkness that we see is actually falling on him, the man hanging on the cross, the one gasping for breath. Jesus was not forsaken because of his own wrongdoing, because he had none. Not even his enemies could accuse him, could find fault of his wrongdoing. So why is he here, taking on the darkness, the settled anger of God? Because he is, as he said to people before, he came to give his life as a ransom for many. That's in Mark 10:45. He's taking the punishment that actually belongs to us, bearing the darkness so that we don't have to. Now, as you read through the Gospel of Mark, you rarely see him alone. He's always being swamped with people. The sick coming to touch his cloak, the kids coming to get blessed, the paralyzed calling out, come nearer, the disciples asking questions, the leaders throwing accusations at him. He's always got people mobbing him for attention. But you notice here, he's not swamped by people who want his attention here, is he? The disciples, they've gone, they've deserted. There are no friends. At his baptism, you heard from heaven, you are my son, with you whom I love, with you I am well pleased. At his transfiguration, we heard from heaven, this is my son whom I love, listen to him. At the cross, what do you hear from heaven? You hear this. Nothing. Jesus quotes scripture and says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, of course, it's not some innocent third party who's suffering, being picked on by God the Father. Rebecca really deals well with that in chapter 2. The bookmark mentioned, is Jesus' death ethical? But the short answer is this. Jesus went to the cross willingly. Not, as the mockers say, to save himself, but to die as a ransom for many. It's said that the American author Mark Twain pranked 12 of the most respectable people he knew. He sent a message, flee, all is revealed. And within 24 hours, 6 of those he'd sent the message to had left the country. Within 24 hours, half of them had gone. Now, I suspect we all have secrets that we'd hate to be exposed, but the Bible tells us that all of our secrets have been recorded. Not just the way we've treated others, but also the way that we've treated God. And all of this, the weight of all of this, separates us from God. But at the cross, you see Jesus taking upon himself the punishment for all that wrongdoing. He died as my substitute in my place, taking the punishment I deserve. The result of Jesus' extraordinary self-sacrifice is this. Jesus paid the price for our sin so that we never have to. The amazing reality is that Jesus loved me enough to die for my sin. For my sin and for the sins of everyone who put their trust in him. So the darkness and the cry at Jesus' cross demands attention. It demands a response. And the first response you get is the response of an insider, a Jewish insider. You can tell they're an insider by what they say. I can't imagine this would have been your first thought at the cross. Verse 35, When some of those standing near heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling Elijah." Someone ran, filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, offered it to Jesus to drink. "Leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down." You remember what the mockers from earlier said? They were expecting Jesus to save himself. So this is actually just another version of the same theme. The onlookers reckon that Jesus is seeking to save himself through the return of the Old Testament hero Elijah. Elijah, who was believed to be, among other things, an aid to people in crisis, like a patron saint for lost causes. And it seems that after 3 hours of darkness, after 6 hours of Jesus being on the cross, these onlookers, these insiders, have actually learnt nothing. If they heard anything of Jesus' teaching, they would know that the prophet who introduced Jesus, named John the Baptist, was known as the Elijah himself who was to come. They've seen everything, these insiders, but they've learnt nothing. These scoffers, they want to see something at the cross, but they reveal themselves to be people who will see nothing. What happens next demonstrates to Jewish insiders that everything has changed. Verse 37, with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. 38, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. At the very moment of Jesus' death, the curtain is torn. The camera pans from the cross to the centre of the city of Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. And inside, we have here pictured the curtain that's 9 metres high, as thick as your hand, separating people from where God's presence dwelt. It stood like a bold no entry sign in the temple, declaring that sinful people could not come into God's presence. But at the moment of Jesus' death, that curtain is torn from top to bottom. This is an act of God, not an act of man. Something dramatically negative and something dramatically positive has happened. When the veil rips, negatively, something has happened, something is destroyed, and positively, something that was previously hidden has been revealed. What the mockers, the insiders, need to hear is that negatively, something has changed. Everything has changed in their relationship with God and their religion. Everything has changed. Jesus came to the temple not so long ago, found it wanting, and it is now condemned. In the end, God forsakes this temple, but not his Son. Jesus will be raised, but the temple will be destroyed. So that's the negative aspect. Of course, there is something really positive being symbolised here in the tearing the curtain. The tearing signifies the barrier between God and humanity has been torn away. It vividly pictures the at-one-ment available between humans and God. Priests can no longer rope God off. This is represented in the New Testament like this verse. Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain that is his body, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with full assurance that faith brings. Through Jesus, we have access to a God who is just, forgiving, loving, who has allowed his Son to die on our behalf. Bad news for the insiders, bad news for the temple, but great news for outsiders. Outsiders like this man we began with, this Roman centurion. And that's where the story takes us. The camera pans away from the temple and back to the cross, where this is the very next thing that happens. Verse 39, and when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, surely this man was the Son of God. The insiders miss the significance of Jesus' death, but nothing is lost on this outsider. to Jewish religion, this Roman centurion. Now, what did this outsider, this Roman, understand about the Son of God? For Romans, power was central to the definition of the gods. And this title, the Son of God, properly belonged only to the emperor, who embodied Rome's majesty. Remarkably, this Roman soldier bestows this title on the humble Jewish man on the cross who's just been executed. He must have changed his mind not only about Jesus, but what it means to be the Son of God. He no longer associated godness with the splendour of military might, instead godness he associated with humility and service of others. So you've seen two responses there. You've seen the response of the insider who mocks and continues to expect Jesus to save himself. And you've seen the response of the Roman, the outsider, whose understanding of who God is and what he's done has completely changed. Only one thing remains. What is your response? What is your response to the cross? Are you like the insiders, seeing the acts and the words of the cross and remaining unchanged, unmoved, convinced that the way of God is not found here, perhaps not found anywhere? This is just another death in history. Nothing to see here, moving on. Or are you like the Roman centurion who looks at the evidence, the darkness, the cry, the man on the cross, and concludes that God is truly here, that he is the Son of God, that he is the true King? If neither of those responses fit where you're at, perhaps you need more information. Let me commend the course that Mark mentioned earlier. It'll give you more time and space to consider the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. I wonder if you heard about the text message that the good people of Hawaii received in 2018. This is what the text message read: "Ballistic missile threat inbound. This is not a drill." It took 38 awful minutes before receiving a text message saying it was a false alarm. But for 38 minutes, you can imagine what happened, can't you? For 38 minutes, people were hiding in bathtubs. Some went into the storm drains. Some went into basements. Many called loved ones. Some said goodbye. Everyone thought, this is the end. No one did nothing. Everyone did something. And friends, I want to suggest to you that the cross is one of those moments. It actually changes everything. It certainly changed everything for this Roman centurion. The cross invites, in fact, the cross demands a response. It actually asks you a question. What's your answer? In fact, in this song we're about to sing, we're asked a question in the 3rd verse. This is how it goes. "See from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did ever such love and sorrow meet, or thorns compose so rich a crown?" Why don't you stand? We'll sing together.